Well. Welcome to The Sweat, everybody, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotze, hanging out with you. I'm moist, I'm sticky, I'm sweaty. It's disgusting. For some reason, they still require us to come in here and work when it's a record 120 degrees outside. Producer Glennon. Anyway, coming up, MLB bets with the second half of the season. That starts today. There's a couple doubleheaders on the slate as well. A way too early look at NHL futures and who to chase around F1. That's right, Pierce Dietrich is here for that. Pierce Dietrich's also here for some over-under as we kick things off around the NFL. Also joined by DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Reed T. Fowler. So I guess you guys have been doing this on the show all week. You've had a theme. There's really no real theme today. We are being very lazy. However, we did choose the first topic based on some riveting news as the Giants are going to wear their old blue jerseys from the 80s and the 90s for a few games this year. So let's talk about Daniel Jones. I know the Giants didn't pick up his fifth-year option. He's got another shot to prove he's the right man for the job, Reed T. His season passing yards total, 3,650 and a half. Does he get there, Brotato Chip?
Well, I'm going to give Pierce more time on this because I know he loves these type of quarterbacks where it's not a lot and we don't really like them that much, but Pierce is all over someone like Daniel Jones, like he was with Carson Wentz, which we did a couple days ago, which you would have known, Emerson, if you ever worked a day in your life. But Brian Daboll's offense is much better than what this offense has experienced over the last decade. So you think about that, you think about what he can do, and on top of that, Daniel Jones has the easiest strength of schedule for any quarterback this upcoming season. I think we can arguably say that he's going to get close to this number in 2019 when he played 13 games. He got just north of 3,000. So I don't mind it. New offensive line, new offense. Saquon Barkley, if he can stay healthy, things are potentially pointing up for the Giants.
All right, go ahead, Pierce. Let's hear it.
Reed knows me too well. Yeah, I love this. He's going over this number. But a lot of it just comes down to health and health of a lot of people, not just Jones. Jones has to stay healthy. His offensive line has to stay healthy. His receivers have to stay healthy. If we can get all of those ifs, then he's going to clear it. He's got the new coach. The coach that made Josh Allen. Now, Jones isn't Josh Allen yet, but under this offensive system, we could easily see him get to 4,000 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, maybe even 500 yards rushing. We saw Josh Allen just put up awesome numbers in this offensive scheme. And he's got the receivers. Look, Galladay is there. Shepard is there. Tony. We got Slate. If those guys can all stay healthy, and he's got Barkley as well to keep the defenses off balance. It's all there. They just have to stay healthy.
Jeff Ulrich, how much faith do you have in him going over this number?
So look, it's an easy over for all the reasons Pierce just laid out. There's great after the catch receivers in New York. You got a new offensive coordinator who typically has helped Josh Allen and it kind of led to a pass heavy offense too in the Bills. Don't forget about that. The one and I talked about this prop actually when it first came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I loved it. But the one thing that has me in consternation today is the Giants now want to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. They're the leaders in the clubhouse. So, we got to wait. Like, you have to wait. Yeah, if Garoppolo goes to the Giants, you can't bet this one. Like, you can't take the over. You really can't. They're not going to trade for Garoppolo and then not play him. Like, maybe it'll just be like one bad game, and maybe it won't even be that bad a game, but he will get in there, and it'll wreck this prop. So you have to wait until Garoppolo news gets figured out. But I do love this over if we can somehow avoid this Jimmy Garoppolo to the Giants situation.
Jeff, under is plus 105 now. Do you like that?
I mean, the thing is, like, I actually think right now today, with the Garoppolo thing hanging over this, it's probably the better bet. If Garoppolo gets cleared up, put me back for the over. But, like, with all the things and with Daniel Jones' injury history, I think with Garoppolo being out there and being the favorite to go to the Giants right now, I couldn't take the over until that situation gets cleared up.
Giants are 12-25 with Jones under center since 2019.
Nice.
On the other hand, San Francisco 25-12 with Garoppolo under center since that same season. Let's go to Carolina. The running backs, no classic jersey news here, but Carolina did unveil a new black helmet design. I don't know, everyone's getting all hot and bothered over these throwbacks being released this week. So we're going to look at the Panthers backfield. Christian McCaffrey, he has struggled with injuries. He has missed 23 games the past 2 seasons, guys. He has a rushing yards total of 900.5 for the 2022 season. Can he hit the over here, Jeff?
This is just such a sucker's bet. Like
Right.
they just want you to take the over so bad. They're like, look, it's 900 yards. It's Christian McCaffrey. This is gonna hit so easy, right? And the thing is, like, I can't sit here and because I say this all the time, I can't sit here and say, oh, you need to worry about injuries. He's got an injury history. Because what do I always say? I say injuries are random. It's the NFL. Everybody gets injured eventually. But you know, I don't. It's Christian McCaffrey on a bad team, and you look at what the Carolina Panthers did. Who did they bring in? Donta Foreman. You could see a situation where he just doesn't get as many like early down carries as well. So this is really just a prop that I'm just not interested in. I think with the Panthers projecting as like a 6-win team, I think in their team total is right now, just not a great offense. I'm just going to stay off this one. I'm just going to take I'm going to use my veto on this and say this is just not a prop you should bet. Yes, the total is basically too low for you to bet the under, but is this really a situation you want to be investing in the over as well? It's not one for me. So as the total stands, I get the arguments that like Christian McCaffrey could hit this in his sleep if he plays even 15 games, but I just don't like the Panthers. I don't like taking overs on anything to do with their offense this year.
Reed T. Fowler, he was given a 96 overall rating in Madden, despite playing, like 10 games in 2 years here?
Yeah, so Jeff lays out a lot of, salient points on this. But I think when he says sucker bet, yeah, you could take it one way. Or you can take about, look, this isn't a bet of if he can do it. Because if he's healthy, of course he can do it. He went 1,100 yards in 2018 and 1,400 in 2019. So he smashed this prop when he played 16 games. That's 5 yards per carry and 6.3 or 6.4 yards per carry in those 2 seasons. It's a matter of value, right? And I look at it the same way Keenan Allen was treated about 5 or 6 years ago, right? Where he was just like every single time he went on the field, you're like, oh, he's going to get injured. And this is what we're doing with Christian McCaffrey. And that is baked into this number, right? If you look at Keenan Allen after those 2 years, 4 of the 5 years, he played all 16 games, right? And only missing 1 in those 5 years. So I'm not saying Keenan Allen is Christian McCaffrey or that's the correlation, but I think there's extreme value in this bet because if he plays 16 games, he is absolutely smashing this number. Donta Foreman can kick rocks for all I care. He's not going to challenge Christian McCaffrey to anything. And it's Baker Mayfield, the most turnover-heavy quarterback in the NFL. You're going to give the ball to Christian McCaffrey, whether it's passing it to him or handing the ball out to him. I love this. This is extreme value. Give me all of this on a bad Carolina team, especially on a bad Carolina team.
Yeah, Pierce, he could be the workhorse here. There's nobody better when he's on the field. The question is, how long can he last?
I think we're over-exaggerating his injuries. Yeah, he had an ankle issue and he had a hamstring issue, but those were bad teams. There was no reason to run him into the ground when they weren't in contention, so they took it easy on him. They've improved the offensive line a lot this season. They're going to be much more competitive. They might be able to sneak into being the number 2 seed in the NFC South. Maybe they're closer to 500. Either way, they're going to be competing all season long, and so you're not going to see him just sit McCaffrey down and let him take it easy. And I also don't think those injuries are going to be nagging and carrying forward. You look just at the math of this. If he carries the ball 12 times a game for 4.5 yards per carry, then he gets there. It's really not that hard for him to do. And also, you have to think Matt Rule is on the hot seat. He's going to get fired if he doesn't get at least a 500 or maybe even the playoffs. So he's going to have to work McCaffrey. He's not going to give the ball to Donta Foreman. If you're going to get fired, you're not going to give the ball to Donta Foreman. You're going to give the ball to McCaffrey 20 times a game and run him into the ground and not worry about it. There's no reason to take it easy on him or play it safe anymore.
Well, guys, the hottest ticket right now, despite the season still being like weeks away, may actually be the Buccaneers and Seahawks. And we're talking a game in Germany, for crying out loud. Everyone's lining up. They want to see Tom Brady tossing touchdowns to this man, lucky number 13, Mike Evans. Some tickets on StubHub have been listed for over $30,000, plus tax, booking, and delivery fees. So anyway, in 2 years since Brady has been in Tampa, Evans has 27 touchdowns. His total for next season set at 10.5. You expect Evans to go over that total again this year, Pierce?
Let's go under. And here's the situation. What if this is Tom Brady's Michael Jordan for the Wizards moment? We all know at some point he's going to fall off the cliff. We have seen this with athletes before. They look fine, and then all of a sudden, it's gone. Now, maybe that's not this season. Maybe that's in 2 seasons. Maybe that's in 3 seasons. But we all know it's going to happen at some point. He's just going to be done. I say it happens this year, and when he just goes out there and lays an egg all season long, Evans is going to put up poor numbers.
All right, Reed, go ahead. I mean, is this the year Tom Brady falls off the cliff, which obviously would impact the touchdown total for Mr. Mike Evans?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, Thigh-gate is in full force, so I appreciate
What?
that. Whoever's behind the
Did
camera.
you, really? You saw the milky white thighs,
yeah,
huh?
saw the thighs.
They didn't get enough sun in
You would
LA.
think in LA you would get some sun, but no. Look, like Shaq Diesel on the Phoenix Suns. The analogy that Pierce should have used was Peyton Manning when he went to the Broncos, right? Like, not the same, right? Because injuries and, noodle arm Peyton Manning with the Broncos isn't probably the same as Tom Brady, but he does have a point. I didn't think about that. But going on the other side, I'm actually going to go over on the fact that Brady is an anomaly. It's like you bet against Tiger, and I know Tiger right now, you would bet against him because it's proven to be profitable. Like, this is not the same because Brady's been taking care of his body, and he doesn't have the same laundry list of injuries that other players that Pierce is talking about has. 83.3% contested catch rate for Mike Evans. And the guy's 19 total touchdowns in the past 2 seasons from Brady, and he gets it all in the red zone. This guy could have 11 catches for 11 touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's what this guy could do this year.
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, we know no Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin recovering from a knee injury, Gronk's gone, so this opens up a slew of available targets for him.
Yeah, the targets are going to be there, but also the primary coverage is going to be there, right? I mean, it's just going to be easier to cover Mike Evans. I mean, I think Mike Evans could push for the league lead in targets, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be fruitful, just from an efficiency standpoint. It could also, let's not forget, I mean, the Tampa knows this. That's why they brought in Kyle Rudolph, who is actually going to be probably primarily used in the red zone because he's so big. So I think that's going to take away some touchdown potential too. Bottom line here is 10.5 receiving touchdowns. That is a massive total. That is a big total. Mike Evans, even if he plays 17 games, he could just end up at 10 or something, or 9 or 8. I mean, touchdowns are just so variable in the NFL. You give me a 10.5 receiving touchdown total, unless I'm just hyper bullish on a player, and I do like Mike Evans, but it's just too big. You should be taking the under. Injuries factor in, team play. Pierce mentioned the whole he hates Brady thing. Good try for the 10th year in a row, Pierce. But no, I'm going to take the under. It's just too big a total.
Yeah, under 10.5 minus 115, same odds on the under or over, whatever the hell I just said. Anyway, NFC South, let's stay there. Let's go to the tight end position because Kyle Pitts, I've been told you guys haven't talked a whole lot of tight ends yet. And a lot was expected out of him his rookie campaign. Hit that 1,000-yard mark, but he had only 1 touchdown. His touchdown total for this year, Reed T. Fowler said at 4.5. Can Pitts be more of a red zone threat this year? What do you think?
Potentially, yeah, but this is where it gets interesting about the Jimmy Garoppolo sweepstakes that we're going to be, it's going to be in full force when he's healthy or when he's available in mid-August, right? Fully cleared. It's Mariota right now, and as much as I love Marcus Mariota, this is tough to try and put Kyle Pitts to take this prop now because Mariota can easily take away those touchdowns, especially in the red zone. And if you look at the 6'6", 240 bill of Kyle Pitts, where he played everywhere, right, on the line, in every position, out wide and inside at the tight end position, he was a massive mismatch for cornerbacks and for nickel corners. So when you have 14 targets inside the 20 and 7 inside the 5, that can translate easily to getting 5 touchdowns. It's just the quarterbacks, right? If it's Jimmy Garoppolo, I actually kind of like it more if he's in Atlanta as opposed to someplace like the Giants.
All right, Jeff. I mean, he is Atlanta's clear-cut top receiving option, but as you kind of mentioned with Mike Evans, I mean, the coverage is going to be there then.
Yeah, and this one really is QB dependent for me. Marcus Mariota is not what you'd call an efficient touchdown producer over his career. Last time he started 13 games was Tennessee in 2018. He had 11 passing touchdowns in 13 games started. It's just, and his career average really isn't that much better. I mean, he had 1 decent season where he had 26 touchdowns in 15 games. That's back in 2016, though, folks. I mean, look, it's just, even if it's Desmond Ridder, even if Ridder gets the start for the Falcons, I would actually be on the over here because, like you mentioned, where else is this ball going to go? But if it's Mariota starting this season, I actually really like the under here. I mean, you're basically asking Mariota to throw a third of his touchdown passes to Kyle Pitts this year. It could happen, but my God, there are better bets on the board than that, people. So this is really QB dependent. If Garoppolo or Desmond Ridder would start, I would probably lean over on this one, but As it is with Mariota, oh man, no, run far away from the over on this one.
Minus 115 odds, Pierce, on the over and the under.
Yeah, I like the over. Our old friend Kenny Ducey said that Pitt was going to be the biggest bust ever, and then he went on to have the second best season for a tight end rookie ever. And talking about coverages, you can try to cover this guy. Good luck. Put your best people on him. Reed talked about this. When you've got a 6'6" super fast guy, he's too big for the quarterbacks. He's too fast for the safeties or the linebackers. We've seen this with other tight ends just like him in the past, that you can't cover Travis Kelce. It doesn't matter what you try to do. And he's only going to get better, right? It was his rookie season. It was also the first year for his offensive coordinator. They're going to develop together, and they're going to find ways to get him the ball more in the end zone. You got to love his yardage prop, but I still think he'll get over in touchdowns as well.
All right, Reed, Jeff, you two are free to go and go enjoy watching Ricky Barnes turn back the clock and leading at the 3M Open right now. But Pierce, we need you to stick around to help us out with some best bets for F1 this week. Take a look at your screen. We got the F1 standings here ahead of the French Grand Prix. Max Verstappen. Not a total shocker there that he's at the top of the board, Pierce Dietrich, because he has twice as many wins this year as the next closest dude. And we need you to talk some best bets for us right now ahead of this week's race. So no surprise, once again, Verstappen, top of the board, plus 110. Is he worth taking at such short odds?
Verstappen has the best chance of winning. I don't think I would take that bet just based on the way things can play out with engine failures, with strategy. But if everything goes his way, or if there's not any quirky things, then yeah, he'll win this race. One of the big things, if things go well, I mean, Ferrari did win the last race with Leclerc. They had a faster car, but it's still pretty close. Now, when we look at France, the big thing with this track is going to be tire degradation. And while Ferrari has improved a lot with their engines this season, Leclerc has taken a big step forward. When we're talking about managing tire wear, Verstappen and Red Bull are still the best. They won this race last season, and that's really going to be the difference for me. Again, barring some weird situations happening, which often happen in these races. But if that doesn't happen, then Verstappen, I think, has the edge based on the tire wear at France.
Well, Hamilton has finished third in 3 straight races, so it's fitting he comes in third here on the board at plus 650 odds. How do you feel about him breaking through, hoisting the trophy, picking up the dub in France?
At some point, he's going to break through. He's going to get a dub this season, but Mercedes just isn't quite there yet. And a lot of those podium finishes have been very, I mean, look, he's finishing races. He's doing what he needs to do. And he's also benefiting from, a Red Bull failure, a Ferrari failure, other issues happening. But he does deserve credit for him not making mistakes and him not failing. But he doesn't have the speed to be the number 1 car, doesn't have the speed to be the number 2 car. And this week, he's not even participating in free practice 1. Every team has to allow a rookie to participate in a practice at some point in the season. So this week, Hamilton's going to sit out free practice 1 and allow the rookie to jump in the car. And if Hamilton's going to win a race, if they're going to go all in and put everything behind him, they're going to do it on a weekend where he gets 3 full practices. So I don't think this is going to be the weekend for Hamilton.
All right, do with some longer odds here. Carlos Sainz. Did I say that last name correctly? Sainz. Cool. Awesome. That's why I go to you, our professional. So Carlos Sainz, DNF, his last race in Austria here, dude, but won the Great Britain GP before that, plus 2,200 odds. If he can get back to the top of the podium?
I don't think he can. He's got 1 win over his career. He had the engine failure last week. Ferrari's had multiple engine failures this season, so you've always got that in the back of your mind. Even if their engine works, they still have to beat the Red Bulls. And again, that tire degradation was a big issue. The Ferrari struggled last season. Yes, they're going to be faster, but they struggled with tire wear at France last season. That's not something that they have shown that they can improve this year. And also, by the way, I don't know if you're keeping track of the weather in Europe, but there's a heat wave going on. So tire wear is going to be even bigger of an issue. and I just don't think Sainz is going to be the way. I'm just going to go all in on the Red Bulls.
All right, man, you've mentioned like engine failures for Ferrari multiple times. So I'm looking at the odds for constructors then. I mean, Red Bull and, of course, Ferrari are your top two teams. But, I mean, dude, give me a reason to look elsewhere here. Or is it just so silly to go off of Red Bull?
It's not silly because Red Bull and Ferrari, I mean, yeah, they've won every race this season, but they've both suffered failures and had issues at every race this season. What we really need is not just 2 failures, probably 3 failures. Or, I mean, really, look, the engine failures have happened to both teams. Red Bull's been pretty good lately. But you can also get into wrecks. You can also suffer minor damage, and minor damage is all that's needed to knock someone out of the race. We saw that happen to Verstappen a couple races ago. Even if they're able to fix the minor damage, the seconds that you have to spend on pit road fixing the car, that takes you out of contention. That could open the door possibly to a Mercedes getting to the top spot.
Yeah.
Or maybe Alpine, the French team, getting to the top. It's not completely out of the question, but again, what you're betting on are a little bit more failures than normal, and maybe that's going to happen with the tire wear and the heat issues, and maybe someone goes on an unconventional 2-stop strategy and it just works out for them. We'll see.
All right. Mercedes was plus 400 in that category. Mercedes loved that word because there's 3 E's pronounced differently. It's a great fun fact. So with that said, again, we talked about Hamilton. Favorite bet for the French Grand Prix?
So the 2 that I'll look at is Yuki Tsunoda to get a top 10 finish. That's plus 225. It's typically, a 12th place driver. And if we're going to have failures, we're going to have issues, it won't be much for him to sneak in. And also, the AlphaTauris are planning some major upgrades this weekend. And so maybe you make that bet now before we see them in practice and they're able to really show off. Also, I like his teammate Pierre Gasly, possibly as a winner. If we want to go crazy, plus 10,000 odds. This is his home track. Maybe they give him something that's really good this week. You get some failures at the top. You get some guys barreling into turn 1 and takes out the number 1 and 2 cars. We've seen this happen before. It's not unheard of. Every season, 2 or 3 times a year, we see the top cars take each other out. It opens the door for one of these guys that we never expected to win a race. Maybe that's Pierre Gasly at plus 10,000 this weekend.
Pierce, you are great. We love having you on this show. Enjoy the rest of your day. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow. I'm not quite sure what's on the menu. Maybe we'll talk some NASCAR. But I can tell you that Major League Baseball is back. Second half of the season. First pitch thrown tonight, this afternoon rather. So let's look into our crystal balls at some future bets right after this. Second half of the Major League Baseball season, it starts today. All-Star game was just a couple days ago. Let's dive into the future. Let's look into our big crystal balls here with our MLB panel. DraftKings contributors Gary and Thor, Matt Meiselman, and Nick Fryer. Great to see all three of you here. So we're checking in on some MLB player futures with the season's unofficial second half about to begin. I do think it starts this afternoon, so keep that in mind for DFS and betting purposes. But yesterday, we looked ahead to some team futures on the DK Sportsbook. Today, we're going to turn our attention to player props. So first, let's talk American League MVP here. Not a shocker. The reigning king in this spot, Shohei Ohtani, the favorite at -115. Aaron Judge is close behind, though, at +150. Seems like a two-horse race here, Gary. And is there anyone else you would consider for American League most valuable player?
No, I think it's pretty much these two, barring some sort of strange, almost like simultaneous injury to these two guys. This is going to be a really interesting case study. I mean, not only do you have, the people who were already tired of Shohei Ohtani last season and were already making the claims all offseason, like, oh, well, if he's just going to do this, he's going to win MVP every single season. Like, how do we live in a world like that? Well, he's still fantastic, and he's still, in my opinion, the most deserving of this award. He deserves to be the favorite. I mean, even if you look at some marginal slip in his offensive numbers this season, and his advanced profile is not identical to what it was last season, but much more positive than his surface numbers, he's still probably going to hit 30 home runs and steal 20 bases. He's striking out less than he did last season, and he's a much better pitcher than he was last season when he won this award. So he's basically carrying the same amount of weight as he was last season when he was, I believe, the unanimous selection for AL MVP. The place where this gets interesting is there's a very solid chance that like Aaron Judge hits 55 home runs and the Yankees win 115 games. And, there's a little bit of media in the city of New York. And if Shohei Ohtani wins this while the Angels win 72 games, there is going to be a referendum on what most valuable player means. Sort of akin to like the Miguel Cabrera, Mike Trout debate we had a decade ago. But I'm strapping in and I'm ready for that because if Shohei Ohtani, as long as he keeps playing like he's been playing, he has to win MVP.
Yeah, Nick, I feel like there's no sharp play right now with AL MVP. You're either late on those two guys, Judge and Ohtani, or expecting way too much to happen in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to try and go and take someone with longer odds, like Yordan Alvarez is number 3, and he's at like 1,000 right now on the DK Sportsbook, like, you have to have everything go wrong with Shohei Ohtani. Like, he's got to get hurt. He's got to get the yips, all this kind of stuff. Aaron Judge, same thing. He's just got to fall off the planet and get lost on the subway or something in New York. There's no way one of these two guys aren't coming home with it. But Ohtani is definitely the guy right now who, I mean, they have the odds, of course, correct on DK Sportsbook. Ohtani's going to get it. The only reason this isn't like -300 right now at this point is just a matter of, is he going to get injured or something like that? I'd like to see Judge win it just because, like, I don't necessarily want it to be the same guy every year. I understand if someone's the best player in baseball, but even in like years where Ohtani's kind of going to be like good, not great in both pitching and hitting, he's still going to be in that category. And this year he's been pretty awesome at both. So, I mean, it makes sense. He's going to take this home.
No, I totally agree with you there. And Maddie, as much as like people like Nick love Judge, I mean, in my opinion, there's just no way to compete with what Ohtani offers on both sides of the ball.
I'm not sure, actually. Well, these two guys, it's just one metric, but in Fangraphs WAR, these are the number 1 and 2 wins above replacement guys in all of baseball for this season, not just the American League.
Yeah, I think they're deadlocked, right? Aren't they deadlocked at 4.7?
Right, so they're actually really close, and both of them are playing probably a lot better than we expected this year, but I think it is legitimately close, just who's been better this year. There are a lot of ways to quantify players. The fact that Ohtani does it on both sides of the ball, like, that is relevant, but he also won MVP last year doing this exact thing for this reason. And if Judge does finish with a higher WAR and the Yankees are going to be ahead of the Angels in the standings, that is a 100% certainty. The Yankees are going to make the playoffs. The Angels almost certainly will not make the playoffs. So if they are close in wins above replacement, like, the only case I think for Ohtani at that point is just that it's unusual what he's done, that it is breaking the mold of how top-end baseball players have performed, except he won the award for that exact reason last year. So I think voter fatigue is the one piece I would add on to that, where it's like, yes, Ohtani could end up being the most deserving, but he's not going to win just because he's a pitcher and a hitter. Like, that reasoning, I think, ended last year. And ultimately, I think there is some value on Judge right now, where this probably is about a 50-50 race.
Okay, cool. It doesn't really sound like you guys would consider anyone else for AL MVP.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and head to National League MVP here. And in that market, Paul Goldschmidt has plus 100 odds at the top of the board. So who is someone who could wrestle that award away from him, Garion?
So I think right now Goldschmidt is definitely deserving of being the odds-on favorite. However, I think one name that's kind of got some interesting odds, and it's interesting because it's his teammate, is Nolan Arenado, who right now is 30-1. Now, I think Arenado's justified in not being one of the top 3 or 4 options at this position currently. However, when you look at WAR, Fangraphs WAR at the very least, it's Nolan Arenado who actually leads the National League at 4.7 wins above replacement, right ahead of his teammate Paul Goldschmidt. And their numbers aren't totally dissimilar on the offensive side of things. I mean, the expected statistics aren't looking amazing for Arenado, but his surface statistics are pretty fantastic. His 149 WRC plus is actually the 6th highest qualified mark in the National League, and it'll probably be the 5th highest mark when Juan Soto is traded, at least if he's traded to an American League team. So I think Arenado's got some fantastic statistics, and with his glove, there's a very reasonable chance that he finishes the year on top of the leaderboard in Fangraphs WAR because of those defensive metrics. And look, the Cardinals have the easiest schedule by win expectancy heading down the stretch of the season. If Arenado just plays better than Paul Goldschmidt for 2 months, I think this number is actually kind of insane at 30-1.
All right, Maddie. I mean, the number that Goldschmidt is at right now in the DK Sportsbook, it's like a perfect example of maybe a train missed. Maybe not a move worth making right now. Who else would you take?
Yeah, I totally agree. So I'm not quite as excited about Arenado. I do think he's interesting, but yes, as in terms of not wanting to bet Goldschmidt right now, 100%. Like this line is so far overcorrected at this point. Like there's just no way you can justify taking even money on Goldschmidt. I think there's a well below 50% chance he wins. Like he should be the favorite, but we should be looking at a market where Goldschmidt is like 3-1, and then a bunch of other guys are 4, 5, 6, 7-1. I think Arenado is a decent call. I think my preferred choice would be Trey Turner. I think there's going to be a bit of a narrative around him where Mookie missed a decent amount of time. The Dodgers could end up with the best record in the National League. And Turner has just been so good lately. Like it's not so much that I think Turner's resume to this point is that great. It's that if I had to pick a guy who winds up being the best from this point forward, I think Trey Turner is the best player in the National League, just given once you add on that he's a shortstop also, he gets that additional value from his position too, whereas a lot of these other guys are first basemen or outfielders. So I really like Turner a lot. I just think he's going to have a really good second half. And by the end of the season, like I think his WAR could wind up being higher than a lot of these guys.
All right, Nick, so who's your preferred bet for National League MVP right now? Because I think the value here is on the cluster right behind Goldie on the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, like all due respect to Goldie, he does like deserve to be the favorite, but at the same time, not this much of a favorite, as everybody's been pointing out already. But when you look at what we talked about yesterday was teams that were going to try and make that surge and possibly get and go and win the division, right? And you look at the Padres, I know they're a little farther back than maybe the Cardinals are or the Braves are. Manny Machado, though, he is an interesting case because, no Fernando Tatis this season, he's gone and mashed. But the guy who I really like a lot, we guys talked about the Braves yesterday quite a bit and how they might overtake the Mets. The Mets do Mets things and the Braves are going to win that division. Austin Riley has been at the center of that. He's plus 1,400 right now. 27 home runs, 22 doubles, leads the league in total bases, 992 OPS. If they're going to make a run, if they're going to make a push, he's going to be at the center of that, so he could take over the narrative too.
All right, let's go to AL Cy Young, Shane McClanahan, and Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander, who I saw with Kate Upton on the red carpet over the weekend. What a beautiful, beautiful couple. Yes, and my wife did find the sunglasses she was wearing, and shockingly, they are very affordable. You can find them at Walmart. Not an ad, but could be. Anyway, Shane McClanahan, Justin Verlander, very close, plus 205 and plus 260 odds, respectively. Going to be one of these guys, Nick, or you see a dark horse coming in hot down the stretch?
Why don't you go to me first? I'm still recovering from that. Kate Upton's going to be upset if Verlander doesn't win in this one. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be with her on this one if he doesn't end up winning this one. I mean, now we talk about narratives. This guy may have the strongest case of anybody, even with Ohtani playing 2 different positions. But with Verlander, I mean, he's pitched in one game since 2019. He pitched 6 innings, and then we don't see him ever again, right? And now he's 39 years old, and he's got a 1.89 ERA, 108 strikeouts, and 109 and 130. At 39 years old, I know his Ks are down, but the walks are still under control. So, this guy absolutely deserves it. if you don't want to go with Verlander, if you think he's going to break down, the guy who I actually like as a dark horse, it's only, I think he's third in the odds in DK Sportsbook, actually is Ohtani. He's got 123 strikeouts and 87 innings, 2.38 ERA, and then there's the whole thing. He's balancing pitching while hitting, and he's still able to put up all these numbers. Still, Verlander's my pick. It's great at 260, but Ohtani, if you think something's going to happen with Verlander, Ohtani's my guy.
All right, Gary, I mean, this shows me in real time that age is just a number, baby.
Yeah, do we know if Verlander's brother gets a Cy Young vote? Has anyone established that yet? 'Cause
Oh,
that could
yeah.
be an unfair advantage.
You know what? That's actually a good question.
I don't think he does. At least I hope he doesn't. But look, I think that right now McClanahan and Verlander are fantastic. Obviously, Verlander's got the narrative aspect of this that's often pretty important for some of these awards. But I will say there's a lot of really good pitchers in the American League this year, and I don't think there's that much separating a lot of these guys. So I wouldn't mind taking some shots in that sort of pack that's just behind the Ohtanis of the world and the McClanahans. I mean, I think if you look even back to last season, here's a narrative for you. Robbie Ray won the American League Cy Young and did not pitch for the American League in the All-Star game. And I've got two guys who could possibly fill that same void.
Ooh.
The first is Dylan Cease, who I honestly think could just be the best pitcher in the American League at 9-1. His stats, surface and otherwise, are absolutely fantastic this season. And I mentioned this with Arenado. It's probably more interesting for this perspective with the White Sox. The White Sox have the easiest strength of schedule going down the stretch of the season. Dylan Cease is going to get to face the Royals and the Tigers and the Diamondbacks a whole bunch in the second half of this season, and he's going to put up some ridiculous numbers. So I like him a lot at 9-1. And then even someone like Kevin Gausman, who's 17-1, right now has the best FIP in all of baseball, leads in F-WAR. That didn't matter last season, Garrett Cole versus Robbie Ray, so maybe that won't matter this season. But I think you can take some shots with guys like that, and hopefully it pays dividends.
Okay, cool. Maddie, if you believe these two are clear contenders for the crown here, I mean, the cost should intrigue you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm with these guys that they should be the top two, but it's the field is level enough that plus 200 to 260, it's just not enough odds. I think the market is relatively efficient. But I've been talking about Cease for a week or two now. This is not going to be as good as Robbie Ray is last year. He was 18-1 last week. I thought that was a good bet. So, the odds aren't quite as good anymore. I do agree that 9-1 is still a little bit too high. If I had to bet someone right now, it probably still would be Dylan Cease. He is the current major league leader in strikeouts too. And he's close enough in terms of ERA that he could pass McClanahan within a couple weeks. So we saw McClanahan struggle in the All-Star game. I don't know if that's predictive of anything. But Shane McClanahan has never been this good before. He's having a historically great season, but this is uncharacteristic for him. His minor league track record doesn't really support how good he's been. So for him to fall off in the second half and push Verlander, but then also maybe someone like Ohtani or Cease, like these guys have mentioned, I don't think that would be shocking at all. So maybe I would just kind of wait and see. But the one guy I do like is Dylan Cease.
Gare Bear, over in the NL Cy Young department, there is a runaway leader in the Sandy Man, minus 125 on the DK Sportsbook. This is his to lose, but in your opinion, who could he lose it to? Do you think that gap between him and Corbin Burns is warranted?
I think it is. I think this is Alcantara's to lose. I would say, though, that I think once you get past him, again, I don't see much differentiation between Burns, even all the way down to someone like Aaron Nola. And the one thing that Aaron Nola gives you, I'm not saying he's going to win NL Cy Young, but he at least throws the innings that it might be necessary to even be comparable from a WAR perspective to Sandy. Because you're going to have to throw a ton of innings, because that's just how much value he creates by going into the eighth inning every single start that he makes. I also think someone like Carlos Rodon, who arguably should have won AL Cy Young last season, is also having another fantastic season for the Giants. It would be the same issue, though, except even more, to an nth degree this season, that he's just not going to have the innings to compete with Sandy. So I worry about that, but there's obviously no way you can bet Sandy at this price point. So you might as well take a couple shots, because again, I don't think there's a lot of separation between the second guy in the NL MVP race and the 10th guy in the NL Cy Young race, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, Garen, because the Giants go on a run, secure a wild card spot, on the back of Rodon. You could see him combining the context, team profile with strikeouts, ERA, and wins. Is there someone besides the top spot, Nick, the favorite here that you like? Who could you see Sandy losing to?
Well, I mean, Gary makes a good point, with Corbin Burns and everything too, and these guys, like how there's that gap, that this grouping that you could kind of go either way on. But Tony Gonsolin still stands out to me. I know he's right there with Joe Musgrove. I don't understand how he's right there with Joe Musgrove. I understand Musgrove's an all-star, had a good year, but like Gonsolin and Burns, I feel like should be on a different level than him. And I know with Gonsolin, like not a big strikeout guy, but still 11-0 and 17 starts is absolutely ridiculous. And if he keeps that up, I mean, like that's the only thing that could like surmount Sandy, even if Sandy keeps doing what he's been doing. And the other thing is too, he's got a .84 whip, leads the league in that, and then he has a 5.3 hits per 9 innings. I understand like not a lot of those are strikeouts and everything like that, but still, like the dude just does not give up hits, and that's an insane number to have right now. But yes, Sandy at -125, not really an ideal number you want to bet, but at the same time, like he's just out there looking like a bully every time he's thrown right now. He's ramming it down guys' throats. Like I have all the confidence in the world. I think if he'd have to have like a 3.5 ERA to lose this thing right now because of all the innings he's going to keep logging.
Yeah, for sure. Maddie, outside the current favorite here for NL Cy Young, who would you consider betting?
I think it's Burns and Rodon. And maybe the difference in the way I look at this is just about like trying to not care too much about the results to this point, because it is only roughly half the season and there are just so many games left. And if I had to vote right now, Alcantara, I mean, he deserves to get every single first place vote at the moment, but I think Burns is a better pitcher. And in terms of strikeouts, Burns and Rodon too are just way better strikeout pitchers. So if Alcantara finishes the year with an ERA in the low 2s or high 1s, he's going to win. But his strikeout and walk rates, like they're not that exciting. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Alcantara have an ERA of 3+ going forward. Like he'll still finish the year sub 3, but it may be the high 2s where his ERA winds up. And at that point, like if Burns has an ERA of 2.1 with way more strikeouts and the Brewers are a way better team, like I think Burns could steal it from him. So Alcantara is the rightful favorite, but I think the odds should be more narrow, and I think Burns should be closer to him.
All right, dudes, you guys absolutely crushed it. We got one final break to go in this show we call The Sweat. We're going to look at some NHL award futures with a trio of hockey heads right after this. All right, it's July. It's wicked hot outside, so there's no better time right now than to chase or fade some of the following statements for NHL award futures. And here to answer said questions that Tom Glennon wrote up, DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich has returned. RotoWire's AJ Scholes, Paul Bruno, absolutely riveting duo, a riveting trio, really. But let's start with the team award here. As we look at the President's Trophy for the league's best regular season record, the Florida Panthers surprised a lot of people by winning this award this season. They are plus 700 to repeat, tied for the second best odds. So I need you to chase your fade for me here, Paul, that they will be in the running once again.
No question. Look, there's three clear division favorites. The Atlantic Division is a real minefield again. It's going to be hotly contested. So I can't pick any of Florida, Toronto, or Tampa to be at the top of the league standings. But I can certainly make a case for the other three clubs. Look, Colorado's loaded. They're going to lose Nazem Kadri this offseason. somewhere in the near future. But I think they may actually upgrade it in goal with the addition of Alexander Georgiev replacing Darcy Kemper. He's younger and he's got his best years in front of him. Meanwhile, Kemper's on the downside, I think. And then I also think a strong case can be made for what's going on in Carolina. They didn't lose anybody of any consequence other than Nino Niederreiter, who just signed off today on a deal that takes him to Nashville. But they added Max Pacioretty and Brent Burns. Tony DeAngelo went out the door. So it's a net gain, I think, for Carolina, and they are the best bet to win their division. And Edmonton, finally, in a very good position in the Pacific Division, when you consider that their main rivals, Calgary, are facing the possibility of losing their two best players in this offseason if the trade rumors are true, because Gaudreau already left. So I can make a case for Carolina and Edmonton and the defending champs today.
All right, AJ, who can you make a case for here?
Well, I would definitely like the call on Carolina. I think that's a good one. Obviously, Colorado, they're the favorites for a reason here. But let me throw one dark horse in here. How about taking the St. Louis Blues now at plus 2,500 for them to potentially add to Chuck in the coming days here? You'll see that line jump tremendously if that happens. They've got still a pretty decent blue line. It'll depend what they have to give up, but by all accounts, they're not looking to give up Torrey Krug, Jordan Binnington with maybe a bounce back year. So I like getting the long odds on the Blues right now. If you're looking for a little bit more value here, just because they are certainly the front runners in the Tkachuk sweepstakes right now.
Jeffrey, hook me up, dude.
As always, these guys are super sharp, Paul and AJ. I mean, I agree with a lot of what these guys have said. I mean, I think the Blues are definitely the dark horse team. I'm a plus 3,500 for the President's Trophy win. I just think that at that number, they're very bettable. This is a team with a very good top six. I know they lost Perron, but AJ's right. Like, this team could definitely add Matthew Tkachuk. They've been pretty aggressive with paying some of their players. You don't love losing Billy Husso, but Jordan Binnington certainly has played at high end for parts of his career, and we're just talking about 1 year here. So I think the Blues are the deep value. I will say this: one bet, you give me one bet, I'd probably take the Hurricanes. The Oilers are in a weak division. They're interesting. I mean, I just can't get myself to even think about the Oilers somehow leading the league in points as an Oilers fan. I think the Hurricanes are the bet at plus 1,000. I do like the moves that they made. They needed that top end scoring. They did it with Burns and Pacioretty. I think that's really going to help them. So give me the Hurricanes, but definitely the Blues is a long shot bet.
Well, as for individual awards, let's start with the Hart Trophy. Let's start with league MVP right here. Last year's winner, Austin Matthews, plus 400. I mean, those are the second best odds behind Connor McDavid at plus 250. McDavid has 2 Hart trophies in his trophy case already. So chase or fade that this award, Jeff, is his to lose next season.
Yeah, so you guys were talking, earlier baseball basically just being a two-man race. And, it's kind of similar. I think the only thing with hockey is it's a high-end, fast-paced contact sport, so injuries are going to come into it. But it is really hard for me to sit here with a straight face and make a case for anyone other than Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews. There's some great players behind them, but like the pace that these guys score at and the pace that the plays that they make and the media attention that they get, it is going to be extremely difficult for any of these players under them in the odds to just dethrone them. We're basically going to need like long stretches of injuries for one of these players because they're in their prime. The production's not going to go down. Their teams are still strong. I just don't see the case. So if we're looking for a dart throw here, I would probably look at a guy like Barkov simply because we're getting him at plus 2,500 odds. If Florida repeats his President's Cup, this guy's a great two-way player. He's kind of in the prime of his career too. Maybe this is the season where he just hits that high-end point total, and maybe Matthews just misses the goal scoring regresses. Maybe McDavid misses some games. But realistically, I think that this is an award where you are either laying down the wood at these short odds with Matthews or McDavid, or you should just leave it alone.
Who's the bet here, Paul?
Well, you can't. It'd be hard pressed to bet against McDavid and Matthews. The best sniper inside the blue line, Matthews, by a country mile. The guy who can grab the puck anywhere on the ice and go the length of the ice, deking 4 or 5 guys for highlight reel goals, Connor McDavid. They'll both do that a lot next year again. But I'll think of a third player that belongs in this category on merit. That's Nate McKinnon. The guy is also a highlight reel waiting to happen, and he's going to put it all together in the regular season at some point to have a career best year. Coming off the Stanley Cup, you got to think he's got to be feeling really good about himself. Plus 1,000 the bet there, and this is still a strong team, miles ahead of everybody in their division, and that's going to be a factor in some big nights for him and his mates this season.
All right, AJ, who do you like in this category?
I mean, these guys are dead on. I mean, it's for sure pretty much a two-man race. Maybe McKinnon could factor in here. So I'll give you one dark horse that I do kind of like. What if Johnny Gaudreau goes to Columbus and they make the playoffs this year, and they're not a terrible team, and he puts up another 100 points here? You know, he had 115 last year. I think at plus 3,000, like, that's a pretty good long shot option there. They would have to make the playoffs. They're not guaranteed to do that. This team has a ton of weaknesses, but if he could lead them to the playoffs, it's certainly not outside of the question. Again, I think these guys are right. I think it's a two-dog race, but if you want to try something else and get a little more value on a long shot here, I like Johnny Gaudreau as a long shot option.
Well, the Vezina Trophy market has this year's winner, Igor Shesterkin, as the favorite. We're looking at plus 250 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. No one has won this award in back-to-back seasons since Brodeur, 2007, 2008. So chase your fate for me here, AJ, that Shesterkin defends his title as the league's best netminder.
I'm going to fade only because I wasn't totally sold based on games played that he should have won it in the first place. I know that's maybe not the most popular take out there, but I'm going to fade that one. I will not bet against Vasilevsky. Plus 500 is really good value there for him. And then, you know, I think there's a couple other guys you could maybe throw a sprinkle in here. Jeff mentioned Alexander Georgiev, or maybe it was Paul. One of you guys did. Plus 3,500, like, that's a pretty long shot odds there, but he's playing on a significantly better team where he's probably going to be the number one guy. Maybe has to split with Pavel Francouz a little bit, but going to Colorado, I think that's a really good spot. So I would take Vasilevsky as my favorite, and then, you know, Georgiev as my long shot.
I mean, Jeff, do you go top of the board here? You got someone with longer odds?
So I think this is an award where you can definitely look down the. I mean, goaltending, you know, it's like putting in PGA. It's a little bit variable. Like, guys can just get a little bit out of form, and all of a sudden their save percentage drops off. And on the other side of it, guys just get in a zone, and all of a sudden their stats just shoot up. I think there's a lot of interesting long shots there here. I think that around the same odds as Georgiev, Jack Campbell at plus 3,000. I mean, look, one thing we've seen from Jack Campbell. Inconsistency, sure, a little bit of injury trouble, but like when he is on, he is absolutely as good as like any of the top 5 goalies. And now he's going to go to a place in Edmonton where they're going to allow a few more shots on net, but they're also in a weak division. Like, the wins could pile up here at a really, really fast rate for Jack Campbell. And they only have Stuart Skinner behind him. So he is going to play a lot. I think that Jack Campbell plus 3,000 is very, very interesting, but there are other players around there too. I think Georgiev is a good call. I think that you could potentially go deeper and maybe take a shot with Ville Husso, who's probably going to play a lot for Detroit as well. That one's maybe a little bit thin, but I mean, there's definitely players above. Jake Ottinger is another guy who would throw it at plus 1,800, who played really well last year. I think Dallas will be a solid team. So I think there's a lot of like longer shots in this category. I like Shesterkin, I like Vasilevsky, but these are short odds at a position it's generally just highly variable year to year in terms of performance.
Paul, does Igor go back-to-back like Brodeur a decade and a half ago?
I think he's legit favorite among all contenders, but the guys have made a case for a few players that make this the most interesting trophy race at the beginning of the season. I'll add 2 more names to the mix. What about 3 more names? What about Freddie Anderson on a Carolina team that looks to be stacked in their division and coming back from injury? Look, I think he's expected to start the season at full strength, and this team's going to be loaded for bear. So you make a case for him. We haven't mentioned UC Saros either, my other favorite in this group. He's a plus 1,000, and he almost did it by himself last year, more than any of the other top goalies. A lot of it was on his shoulders, what he accomplished. And I think that's going to be the case again. And this team also has a defensive mindset that plays into his success. So a lot of factors in his favor. But I'll play off of what Jeff said and AJ said. St. Louis could be a team to watch in the NHL standings, particularly if they get Kachuk. Even without him, I look for Binnington to have a big bounce back season, and he'll be in the mix as well.
Jeff, Paul, AJ, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for talking some sticky puck with us, because we're all sticky with how hot and sticky it is outside. So you get the slate coming up 5 o'clock. Back in studio tomorrow morning, live here, 11 o'clock Eastern time, talking all the sports, because that's what we do here on The Sweat.